Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome in, everybody. It's a jam-packed Wednesday edition of Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor. Glad to be here with you today. Should be a fun show. We got a lot coming up for you here. Let's set it all up. On a Kansas City radio station, J.J. Piccolo says even young players could be on the table. Bobby Witt Jr. We'll discuss that a little later in the program. Shohei Ohtani doing more unicorny things last night on the mound and at the plate. We'll have that coming up top of the next hour. We'll have Wichita State men's basketball coach Paul Mills joining us. We'll get an update on how this new look Shocker roster is looking in the summertime. And we start things off today. Very excited to have Wichita State softball coach Christy Bredbender joining us here in this first segment. We'll get to her in just a second. Tommy, how are you?
I'm good. Looking forward to this morning. Glad we've got a jam-packed show, so looking forward to getting right into it.
Jad Chambers producing for us. The IHOP hotline will be open as always. 869-1240 is that number to call. All right, let's jump in with one of our favorites, Christy Bredbender. Christy, how are you? Enjoying the offseason, kicking back, relaxing, nothing going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, complete opposite, actually. I just got back last night from recruiting in Colorado, and I'm actually home for 6 days, which is the exact amount of days I've been home in the last 6 weeks. So pretty busy, but in a good way, for sure.
Christy, let's talk about first, just because it's on the way out, Sydney McKinney, the year she had. And I know we've all talked about how great she is, but has that absence hit yet that she's not going to be there next year?
Well, I think, as Coach Economan and I, especially since we're kind of in some transition with our pitching coach, have been out recruiting the last couple of weeks. I think that's the thing we talk about the most. You don't replace a Sydney McKinney, right? I mean, how often do you find a 526 hitter that can hit over 500 2 years in a row and lead the NCAA? And so, I think we get it. It's settled in. I think senior day for us was, a very humbling moment, because I think one of those things is that, we hope to continue to find the Sid McKinneys in the world, but the reality of it are pretty slim. And, now we just kind of challenge ourselves to figure out, what are we going to do with this lineup next year to make up for her, make up for Zoe Jones, make up for Lauren Mills, because, a lot of times Sid, because she's just so good, overshadows the fact that Zoe and Lolo are also some pretty big shoes to fill. So, we're trying to figure that out. And I think we've got some really good kids coming in. We've got some kids that we, have brought in on visits in the transfer portal, one coming up here soon as well. And, we're just trying to put a good lineup together that we think can compete in the conference. And we're going to take advantage of having Sydney McKinney as our graduate manager, and hoping she can spread her ability and knowledge to the rest of the team for the next couple years.
Coach, it was really crazy to watch the way that OU went through, and won and got the national championship, and just in dominant fashion. When you look at a program like what Oklahoma has, and then, obviously the way that your program has grown over the last couple of years, has really gotten onto the national map. You look at a program just down the road in Norman at OU. What do you take from what they've been able to do with the Sooner program to be able to apply it here in Wichita?
Well, I think, there's there's one major similarity, and I think it's the best softball teams, the teams that I feel like, succeed the most at the highest level are the teams that have a culture of work. And Coach Gasso and Jen and JT have just done an unbelievable job of getting their kids. I mean, they're getting the best of the best, right? And a lot of times at that major level, the best of the best don't think they need to get better. They think that they're at their peak and that they put in the time. And, she's created such a culture of work where they come in and they put in the time and they want to get better. And I think that's a similarity that we share. We understand that we're not getting the best of the best. We're not getting those top 10, top 25, probably not even top 100 recruits routinely. And so when we get kids in our program, we have such a great culture. I feel like every year coming back of kids that want to work, and our upperclassmen are such great examples of what that takes, what it's going to take to get to that next level, to really get the best version of yourself out. And it's work, and it's that extra time that we're all willing to put in prior to practice, after practice, in practice, in the weight room, classroom. I mean, just a true understanding that, we're definitely a blue collar program that has to put in the time and the work. And, you see a program like OU, and I mean, they're phenomenal. The difference is for us, the work that we're putting in has a little bit more of a fundamental focus to it. The work they're putting in is that next level work that, hey, we've got the swing down. Now we focus on, hitting different counts and understanding how to hit different speeds a little bit more really early in their careers, where that's the stuff that we're really fighting with our kids still, sophomore, junior, even in the senior year a little bit, and they get to jump on that stuff in the fall of their freshman year. So a cool trait that I think we have some similarities on, but man, they're the standard of excellence, and just watching them compete, if anybody ever gives them a close game, it always seems like the next game is a blowout because they're so good at making adjustments. And I think that that's the hard work that they put in.
Well, you guys, Chrissy Bredbender joining us, Wichita State head softball coach. You guys are on the path now, and you'll have a little more ammo, I would think, on the recruiting trail when you talk about the facilities upgrades that are coming to the program. Is that tangible yet as you're out recruiting? Are you able to use that and point to that as you are trying to get, all those next Sydney McKinneys out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've done a really great job of marketing the facility upgrades that we're going to get. And, it's cool to see, we've got some boosters and some great fans that have been posting pictures, and Brett Kemnitz of the turf going in, and just different things that are evolving. And so I think it's definitely caught the eye of people. I actually feel like it catches more of the eye of the other college coaches out there more than it catches the eye of recruits. I've had more college coaches come up to me and say, man, your facility is really going to be great, much deserved, and things like that. And so I think for student athletes, they don't notice it as much until they see it, right? Because there's so many places out there that you're trying to recruit and trying to show the next big thing, that I think kids are getting smart, and really till they see it happen and see the shovels in the ground and the building going up, that to them, they don't want to get caught up in that ploy. And so I think kids are a little more savvy. It's definitely caught some attention. We're excited about it. We're really hopeful that we can start moving on phase one here this next year, and really excited to if you just look at it, we've put about $2 million into our facility over the last year and a half. And, that's just a really great tribute to President Muma and our athletic director, and our actually previous athletic director really was the one that got the ball rolling, and just, Kevin's picked up where he's left off. And so I think it's just really cool to see the commitment they've made to our sport.
Coach, you mentioned it a few minutes ago, transition with your pitching coach on your coaching staff. Presley Bell no longer with the program. Courtney Oliver is the new pitching coach in your program. She's a familiar face to fans in the conference, most recently associate head coach at Houston for the last couple of years and was head coach at East Carolina for 6 seasons. What does Coach Oliver bring to your pitching staff, and what do you expect from her and what she can do in developing talent?
Yeah, I think, this is her niche, and this is what we're pretty excited about. Courtney, a lot of times people don't know, they don't look at her background deep enough, but was at North Carolina State and won an ACC championship, went to the first postseason tournament with North Carolina State as a pitching coach. And, she'll admit to you, I think that's her niche. I think, she had some years at ECU as a head coach, which I think are valuable, and that brings a lot of experience into our staff. But I think her desire and drive is to help pitchers. And, Presley Bell did a really great job with our pitchers, and I think got them as far as she could get them. And, we owe her a lot and really respect her and her chance to jump in at a really young age. But I think the thing our pitching staff needed most was experience and somebody that could take them to that next level, really develop them. And, just in the interview process, Coach E and I obviously have been around each other for a long time, but we were both really impressed just about the way she's going to tackle the pitchers and how she talked through, being a little bit more experimental. Hey, let's try to make her spin better by, having a day where we just kind of focus on pressure points and changing grips and, being a little bit more open to developing the holistic pitcher versus really structured on the fundamentals. And I think her experience, and she did a really good job at Houston. She actually was in charge of one pitcher at Houston. They had a pitching coach that was in charge of the majority of the staff, but Courtney was tasked with Kenna Wilkie, who was one of the best pitchers in our league. And I felt like really got better from, last year to this past year, beat us on Sunday in our series. And, I'm looking forward to it. I think her experience and really kind of ability to dig deep a little bit in the development of pitching is going to be a real benefit. And we've got 2 freshman pitchers coming in addition to our kids returning, that I think have sky high potential. And it scares me a little bit because I say sky high potential because nowadays those kids that really get better in college, they fly the coop a little bit. Another school sees, oh, this kid's gotten really good. And that's the kind of potential I see in these kids. So, we want to continue to create a really great environment and hang on to our kids. But I think she's going to be able to do some things. This is the first time first time ever that I've been at Wichita State that I'm just as excited about our pitching as I am about our ability to hit the ball, because I know we'll always be a good offensive team, but pitching wise, we're really starting to get better and develop. And last year was a turning point, and I'm pretty excited about what this staff can do.
44-12 last year, another trip to the postseason. Wichita State head softball coach Christy Bredbender joining us. So on the roster that's coming back, Christy, we know Addie B's back. She'll be an All-American preseason, all of that good stuff. Are you seeing anybody? Is there anybody you think or who's sort of standing out as a name to really watch this year?
Well, I think a person that gets overshadowed a lot that had a wonderful year for us last year was Lauren Lucas. Steady Eddie. She'll probably slide maybe into the leadoff spot for us this year. But batted 3 hole, was an RBI machine, clutch hitter, somebody that we really counted on. So her and Addie are going to be the catalyst. They're going to be the leaders in our lineup. I think that we need to keep an eye on Taylor Solachek. You need to keep an eye on Sammy Hood, 2 freshmen that got a ton of at-bats, a ton of experience last year. Sammy was the defensive player of the year. I just think those 2 kids are special, and it's really up to them offensively to decide how special they're going to be, because we've seen the glimpses of really good things offensively. they just were inconsistent, as a lot of freshmen are. And so they just have to kind of buy in. I think the big step for them next year in the lineup is being able to relax and create confidence a little bit more. You know, it was easy to have a little anxiousness and things like that as a freshman and try to swing, you know, outside of our shoes a little bit. And so I think that maturity that they're going to hopefully, you know, possess as they get older into our program will really make them better hitters. I thought Kristen Nelson really finished the year strong offensively. She plays a great third base and really turned a corner. And but, you know, we're going to need some kids to step up. You know, we've got a freshman coming in that's a catcher named Sophie Johnson. I think fans will really like her as a receiver. She's going to really help Laney, but just really strong arm, fires the ball back to the pitcher, throws people out. I mean, she's playing right now in Colorado, and I've had a lot of big-time coaches come up to me and say, man, your catcher coming in is really, really good. And so we're pretty excited about that. I mean, we've got, like I said, 2 pitchers coming in, but, you know, we've got outside of Sophie, 3 other kids, Sydney Zenon, Avery Barnard, who's Addie's little sister, that's coming in, and then Mila Seaton, a kid out of the Baser area that I think is an extremely great athlete and really needs to develop, but she's those type of kids like the Addie Barnards of the world that played multi-sports. And, you know, we see those kids have a lot of success in our program as far as development goes. And so this is going to be a different year for us because we don't have Sid, because we don't have Lolo. We're a little bit more right-handed hitter dominant. So in the portal, we've really been chasing lefty hitters and, you know, hoping to add a couple of those to the mix as well. But we're going to have to manufacture runs a little bit different way next year. But I think Taylor, Sammy, Cam Compton's got an opportunity, Bailey Urbine. I mean, there's some kids that need to step up that have been in the program for a couple years that we hope can kind of fill some big shoes.
Well, Coach, we really appreciate it. Enjoy this time back home with the family. I know it's always busy. We appreciate it. We'll do it again soon, and we'll just continue to follow you guys as you become one of the hot tickets in town and you know, continued success. And we know it's there and can't wait for the facilities and all the good stuff to come. So we appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on with us, Coach, and we'll do it again soon.
Hey, thank you guys so much. Appreciate your time this morning.
There goes Christy Breadbinner, head softball coach at Wichita State. If you missed anything, if you're joining us late, you can always go back and listen to that interview on the Odyssey app. Arrow continues to be pointed up for Coach and the Shockers softball team. We'll digest a little bit of that. We'll talk about this Bobby Witt stuff and more here on Sports Daily. Before we go, though, we got to tell you that Odyssey is teaming with the City of Wichita, the Wichita Parks Foundation, Riverfront Stadium, and the Wichita Wind Surge to bring you Red, White, and Boom. It's July 4th at Riverfront Stadium. Entry is free. Gates open at 6. Riverfront's concessions will be open, plus enjoy the food trucks on the Hyatt lawn. Watch the Surge play in Tulsa on the Jumbotron and stay for the fireworks. We'll be right back. It's Jacob and Tommy, Sports Daily.
Oh, okay, take it easy. We're going on the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
Welcome back in, everybody. Always good to catch up with Christy Breadbinner. Softball program. Look a little bit different this coming season. Should be pretty interesting and entertaining. A little bit different, but a lot of firepower coming back, and can't wait for those facilities and all the things that are coming for that program and postseason hosting and all that stuff. We'll check back in with Coach a little later in the offseason. If you missed any of it, go back and listen on the Odyssey app. Tommy, let's look at the Royals. A bummer last night. They blow the save. Scott Barlow does. Can't help the trade value. And yesterday, some interesting stuff with the Royals and, doing some local radio there, and tells Cody and Gold that they're basically JJ Picola came on 610 Sports in Kansas City and told them that, if the price was right, of course they would consider trading one of their young players. We set it up there, but let's go to the IHOP hotline first. Mike's on the line. Mike's got a Royals question for us. Mike, what's up?
Hey, guys. Hey, it's cool to be on the air. Is there any chance that the Kansas City Royals make the playoffs this season? Sure, there's a lot more games to be played this year, but for sake of argument, if the Royals were to win the next 30 straight games, they'd still be below 500. Thanks, guys.
No. There's no chance that the Royals will make the playoffs.
Not a
season.
chance. No way.
No, I'll say zero. I'll die on that hill. 0% chance.
Is there a less than zero chance? Because I'll take that one.
It's just so. I mean, the only thing that might make it like 0.00001 is their division's terrible. But yeah, I mean that's the point you made there at the end, Mike. They could win the next 30 just to get to in a row, just to get to 500. So no. The real question for the Royals season, I mean, this will be, I think, the most interesting stretch of 3 or 4 weeks because it all focuses in on the trade deadline. Again, Scott Barlow blew the save last night. That's not good. But Chapman was clean in his inning of work. That's certainly good. Those are sort of the two guys. And then it just becomes, that Salvador Perez, I think, has some value. And you sort of look at that. But yesterday, again, Piccolo tells 610 Radio in Kansas City that, yeah, if a team offers the right young player, we'd listen. Oh, boy. I think that's just basically laying out what the Royals are willing to do. I would be stunned if they traded. Number one, I don't think you'd be maximizing his optimum trade value at this point if you did that. But teams aren't dumb. Teams know how good this guy is, and teams know how controllable he is for a long time. So, yeah, I mean, you could get a desperate team, but you're talking about a package that would have to, because I don't remember, where was Bobby Witt Jr. ranked in prospect rankings? Like, he was top 5, I think.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure when he got called up.
Sure.
So you're talking about at least getting a team's top prospect, which they're almost never willing to trade, right? And it better be like top prospect. And then a package after that of just a ton. Like the thing is, it doesn't save the Royals any money. So the prospect return on a trade like that would have to be so massive. And for a team trading for Bobby Witt Jr., he has yet to reach his potential. So you're not locked into what he's going to become yet because he hasn't been there yet. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I know there's like this contingent of Royals people pushing for this. And I would bet you it's the same contingent that would argue that Bobby Witt Jr.'s, sort of flopping this year. And I think that's crazy. I mean, the team has nothing to hang its hat on. And the other thing Bobby Witt Jr. has is that swag or whatever that is. Bobby Witt Jr. fits the profile of a franchise cornerstone, right? Like Bobby Witt Jr. and Patrick Mahomes, strictly talking about like swag or whatever you want to call it, are seem to be cut in the same mold, right? And so you're taking a massive risk if you trade him away. Massive risk. And you had better be right. It is far riskier, in my opinion, to trade Bobby Witt Jr. than to let him stay and never become that, MVP caliber player that you might envision. It's far riskier for you to trade him and him do that somewhere else. That would be staggering. And you absolutely better get it right. And it's an organization, Tommy, that almost never does. So, like, for me, as somebody that follows that team and seeing people like want them to do this, I'm like, what confidence do you have in this organization to get that trade right in the first place? And now that's it. Like, he's all you've got besides Salvi, who, unfortunately for Salvi, time's going to run out on that. That's it. I mean, that's all you got. Why on earth would you ever trade him?
But what's the alternative? And what kind of confidence do you have if they don't trade the young stars? I mean, I don't have confidence either way. So to me, it doesn't really matter. They could trade their entire contingent of young stars, and I would say, all right, I'll believe it when I see it. Or they could not trade their young stars, and I would say, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. Like the amount of goodwill that the Royals organization has built up in me is zero. There's nothing. There's no trust. There's no confidence, regardless of what they do. So I think that this is JJ Piccolo doing a little bit of self-preservation here, and I don't blame him. He's trying to keep his job, and so he's going to be saying that anything is on the table to try to do whatever possible to try to make them better and to keep his job. I mean, this is the literal dictionary definition of desperate times call for desperate measures, right? Like, that's really what this is. So I'd honestly, if they announced at the trade deadline that they traded Bobby Witt Jr. for a litany of young prospects that are highly well regarded, I would say, okay. I mean, it's not going to surprise me. All right, cool. Like, they're desperate. They're doing what they need to do. If they trade Salvador Perez and they get some prospects back, I'd be disappointed, but I would say, all right. I mean, nothing else has worked. So I guess, all bets are off at this point. So really, I don't, when he said that on the radio in Kansas City yesterday, I wasn't taken aback by it. I wasn't clutching my pearls like, oh, he can't do that. He can't. I'm like, okay, like, I understand why. He's desperate, and the entire organization is desperate.
It is, but that's my problem. It's better to have one good player than no good players, right? Like, it's Salvador Perez is strictly an emotional, God, I'm going to be, I really wish that he could, but that's just emotion. Like, that makes baseball sense. Bobby Witt Jr. to me doesn't make any baseball sense to trade away because there's almost zero chance you'll get the appropriate return for a lot of reasons, and one of them is he hasn't reached his full potential yet. So you're trading this guy at a value almost to the buyer. And maybe they just jack the price up so high they don't do that. And that would be my guess, is that they'll say, if you're going to trade for Bobby Witt Jr., you're going to trade on potential in what we think he'll be, and that's what it's going to take, right? You're trading for him if if he turns into, Corey Seager or whatever. Like, that's what you're trading for. And so it doesn't make any sense to me to trade him now. Like, what's the difference in trading him now and trading him next year if that's the way you go? And he takes a step forward, and he's still way controllable. I mean, he'll still have so many controllable years. It's not like the financial gains on waiting for him to continue to develop are going to not impact the trade much. You're still going to have that in the plus column if you're the Royals, if you wait and he continues to develop, and now he's got maximum trade potential. When you talk about like a Juan Soto trade, right? They traded him. Nobody could believe it, but that's when he was at his absolute peak in value.
But you know why? You know why JJ Piccolo is, I would suspect, at least entertaining the idea of trading Bobby Witt Jr. this year? Because he might not have the chance to trade him next year. He might not be the general manager next year, right?
John Sherman still has to sign off on everything.
I get it, but like, this is strictly from Piccolo. This would be a business decision, and I'm not saying that it's the right decision to make. Although I do think, I think that if a Bobby Witt Jr. trade were to happen, it wouldn't surprise me, but I would think, okay, I'm not sure that was really the right move. That being said, though, there is an argument that can be made that getting the quantity of players in return to try to build up that farm system is better than the quality of one Bobby Witt Jr. I don't know if that's the case, and time will tell. And more than likely, Kansas City Royals fans are going to look back if they trade Bobby Witt Jr. and say, man, we let a superstar go. But it wouldn't be the first time that the Royals have let a superstar go. Think of all Beltran, Damon, you name it. They've let superstars walk away before. Really hasn't always panned out, but there's a precedence for it.
It's not that that's not the savvy baseball thing to do. It might be, it probably is when you're starting from zero. The problem is you're not going to get maximum value for Bobby Witt Jr. right now. So right now, to me, is not the time to have to make that sort of difficult sky is falling decision, because you haven't reached the peak potential yet of what that player could bring back to your organization. And I can almost guarantee you that when John Sherman puts his head on his pillow and has dreams of this new downtown ballpark, one of the banners and all over it is Bobby Witt Jr. Like it, I think in a perfect world for the Royals, that downtown ballpark would be the place that Bobby Witt Jr. built. And so there's a lot to consider when you think about that sort of thing. Now, Piccolo's saying it just because Piccolo needs to say it, right? Like he doesn't want to close the door on it. But if it's not, I'm trying to think of an equitable trade, and Soto would be unfair of what we've seen in past years. I mean, I'm telling you, like if you're making that trade now, it had better be for 4 to 5 prospects, 3 of whom are the organization's top 3 prospects, and those prospects better be like inside the top 50 kind of a trade. And number one, I don't see what team is going to be willing to do that, but that's the kind of return you had better get out of Bobby Witt Jr. if you're going to trade him.
Yeah, think of a team like the Yankees or a team like the Dodgers, who typically bring in big players and can spend a lot of money, and that are going to be more than likely active at the trade deadline because both teams are going to be in divisional races where they could use a hot young talent like Bobby Witt Jr. at third base, right? Or at shortstop. The Dodgers, for instance, have Max Muncy, who is injured, who's been their third baseman. Bobby Witt Jr. conceivably could go and play that third base role. I don't even know what the status at third base is for the Yankees. Is it still Josh Donaldson? Because I feel like he's kind of fallen off the face of the earth a little bit. So both of those teams would potentially have openings at one of those positions for Bobby Witt Jr. and could afford to pay him when that time comes. I think that both teams are going to be active, and I think that both teams could potentially give the Royals a pretty solid return if they make Witt Jr. available. Again, I'm not advocating for a trade. I want to see Bobby Witt Jr. blossom and flourish in Kansas City. I understand, though, JJ Piccolo trying to save his job by doing any means necessary to try to turn this ship around and point it in a different direction. And if that means trading young stars like Bobby Witt Jr., I don't like it, but I get it.
But so those teams you bring up, I agree, because they're also usually teams that have ammo in the system because they do it well. Bobby Witt Jr. this year, I mean, he helps them a little bit, right? But again, you're trying to, if you're those teams, you're also trying to reach the postseason, right? And so they may need to use that ammo to go get somebody that better helps them do that right now. To me, it makes no sense. And if that trade partner's out there, I'd be stunned. If a team like Texas, where Bobby Witt Jr.'s from, who would become an instant megastar there, had a need anywhere Bobby Witt Jr. could play, okay, maybe in the offseason, when it doesn't impact you as much this year, that might make some sense. They don't need his position. They're young and good at all of the positions that he plays. So I just don't know, like, what team at the deadline who's trying to put themselves over the edge to reach the postseason is going to look at what Bobby Witt Jr. is right now in his career and say, that's going to put us over the edge and help us win a World Series. Bobby Witt Jr. is not there yet. And again, I think his development's coming along fine. I'm not in that camp either, but it's still not there. And he's still not the walk in the door and change the trajectory of your World Series chances so much that I'm willing to give up the farm to get him. Like, the trade partner, I cannot imagine exists for what you'd want to do there. So if that's the case, and maybe it does, look, maybe there's a smart team. Let's take like Tampa, for instance, who's always got good prospects and good players. And they see it as a controllable asset for a little while that they'd be able to afford. I mean, I think that's more likely than, a mega spender, because the mega spenders are going to mega spend on Max Scherzer at the trade deadline, right? Or whoever it is to try to win that World Series. It's an interesting type of need for somebody like Bobby Witt Jr. that to me makes way more sense in an offseason move than it does in a midseason move when teams are trying to start over and rebuild and have a totally different frame of mind. I just don't understand what anyone thinks is going to be there. It just, teams, just about every team in Major League Baseball would like to have Bobby Witt Jr. Let's get that out of the room right now. He's great. He's going to be great, I still think. But it's the right now aspect of it that doesn't make sense to me for the camp that's like, let's blow it all up and trade every single player. And while I get that to some degree, again, because it can't really get worse, and there's not really any hope on the horizon. And when Bobby Witt Jr. becomes really expensive, the hope is dwindling, right? That it's going to be there then either. So I get all of that. What I don't get, though, is doing it when he's not at his maximum value, which will happen in two ways. One, it'll be in the offseason, not in the midseason. And two, it'll be as he continues to develop. If he continues to develop this year and gets on a second half tear, which is totally possible, then maybe you visit in the offseason. Or next year, if the development continues and now he starts to turn into that dude, which that would be about the timing for it, now you can talk about it when you've only won 20 games.
Do the Royals have the luxury to wait, though? And I don't know if
Absolutely.
They do. I don't think.
Why? What's the rush?
This rebuild has already gone on for 6 years? I mean, if you wait until next year, and I'm not advocating to trade Bobby Witt Jr. I'm trying to think from the perspective of a general manager who's on his first year on the job and is under probably a significant amount of pressure from the fan base to at least show some kind of signs of turning this around and being active, being aggressive in some way. And if you're going to sit on your hands and sit back and wait, I can see how Piccolo thinks, man, I don't know if I've got the luxury to sit around and wait for Bobby Witt Jr. to get to maximum value. Well, I can understand that.
First of all, quite frankly, I don't care about Piccolo's desire to keep his job. Like, I think that's a different conversation. And I don't think John Sherman
I don't necessarily care about it either, but that's the reality, right?
He would squash that in a second.
This is self-preservation from
Sherman would squash that in a second. Like that desperation's fine until you're talking about your franchise cornerstone. It just like the reason that you can wait is because nothing they would get in a Bobby Witt Jr. trade now is going to help them win the division next year anyway. So you might as well get the best possible return that you're going to get. If you're going to make that move, get the most you can get from it so that you can help facilitate a rebuild. Because right now you're not going to get the best of what you can get in a Bobby Witt Jr. trade. Maybe there's a desperate, if I'm another team, though, I'm just not doing that. It doesn't make any sense. And if I'm the Royals, if you trade that kind of player, you better trade him at maximum value. Don't do it when he doesn't have maximum value. You'll regret it for 30 years. If you don't it just doesn't make any sense. There is waiting too long and there is going too early. But for Bobby Witt Jr., just let him continue to develop before you make a franchise-altering move like that so that you can get the most back for him that you can possibly get. That ain't coming this year. It's not.
I mean, look, I definitely recognize that, but I also know that the fan base, as much as they love Bobby Witt Jr., they're getting restless, and there's got to be some kind of
those
sign.
Those aren't reasons.
I'm not.
To trade.
I get it, but it is a reason to at least look at whether maybe it's not Witt Jr., maybe it's another one of their young players or several of their young players. I want to see the Royals start to be aggressive to make some moves to get the ship turned around. That's bottom line.
I do too. That's totally, but not by trading Bobby Witt Jr. 869-1240 is the number to call. We got Paul Mills coming up, top of the next hour. We'll take one more quick break. We'll come back. We'll do a giveaway. We'll get you ready for that. Talk a little Shocker Hoops coming in just a little bit. Shohei Ohtani and his just absurd numbers this year. All coming up for you on Sports Daily.
97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Tune in to the Retire Hour Show Saturday at 7 a.m. on KFH or online at kfhradio.com.
Brought to you by Forever Long.
Celebrate your birthday at Hook and Reel Cajun Seafood Restaurant. Enjoy a free birthday boil, including your choice of seafood and sauce, with corn, potatoes, and cheesecake. Get the details and eat for free on your birthday at Hook and Reel at Towney Square, Kellogg, and Rock.
We love to celebrate the 4th of July with family, friends, food, and fireworks. Please be safe this Independence Day and don't drink and drive. From your friends at Odyssey and Devon James Injury Lawyers.
This is an important notice to consumers facing $10,000 or more in credit card debt, medical bills, or other unsecured debt. You may not be required to pay it all back because there are special programs now in effect that will significantly reduce the amount you will owe if you qualify. This is not bankruptcy or a debt consolidation loan. These programs, which the credit card companies like to keep secret, exist to aid American consumers struggling with overwhelming credit card debt by offering tremendous savings and real debt relief. Accredited Debt Relief has established a special hotline for you to call and learn what savings you qualify for. They've helped qualify consumers with over $1 billion in debt and are A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. So don't wait. Get the relief you need during these hard economic times. For this free information, call the Accredited Debt Relief Hotline now. Call 800-330-2900. 800-330-2900. That's 800-330-2900.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bob and Tom.
Dolphins evidently mama talked to their baby dolphins.
A bunch of us girls were staying at a house once, and there were dolphins outside, and we were calling them. Here, kitty, 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 kitty.
I bet the wine was flowing, the giggling.
Oh, yeah. We were out on this little platform out in the water.
Watching some hunky boys walk by,
No.
calling.
There were no.
Get over here, stud. We'll let mama take care of you now.
Bob and Tom in the morning and highlights all day long.
Bob and Tom, mornings. This is 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bob and Tom.
The other day I was on the toilet paper through my old reading side here. Reminded me of some of my favorite 4th of July jokes. What's red and white, blue and green? Uncle Sam, after eating potato salad that was left out in the sun for too long.
Sure, green.
Now, what do you get when you cross the brontosaurus with fireworks?
I give up.
Dynamite.
Oh, I got it.
Bob and Tom in the morning and highlights all day long.
Bob and Tom, mornings. This is 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
If you missed Bob and Jeff, you missed this.
Yeah, he looks young though. He's 32, I believe. I don't know why you ask him his age, but whatever we do in a newsroom. Hey, how old are you? Like, you don't ask me my age. You know what they'll get? 83. A punch in the nose. Oh, a very weak one. You think it would be weak? Yeah, kind of. You got the arthritic condition. You don't think I got a little bit of an old man strength thing going? Hard to say. I don't know. I feel like I do.
Bob and Jeff, afternoons at 2 on KFH.
Some kind of week for Zion Williamson. Zion is quickly hurtling toward being more famous for nonsense as opposed to basketball. For his injuries and his windmill dunking while being injured and weight issues. And now a wild love triangle. And something tells me there are even more angles to this drama ahead. You're never going to defeat sex or father time, but you could put up a much better fight than this.
Jim Rome, middays from 11 until 2 on 97.5 and 1240 KFH. If you missed Bob and Jeff, you missed this.
It's fascinating to see how the Reds have kind of transformed themselves. I think the Reds have already, in a weak division, I think they're already the quality of that division. That's my prediction. They just got to pitch. I think they'll win the division. So you heard it here first. Okay, and that's not outstanding. It's an amazing proclamation. It is? Yes.
Bob and Jeff, afternoons at 2 on KFH.
Major League Baseball, the Kansas City Royals continue at home at Kauffman Stadium, hosting division rival Cleveland. The Royals and the Guardians at 7 o'clock Wednesday night, right here on 97.5 and 1240 KFH. Royals Baseball on KFH, brought to you in part by Icon Collision Center and Baxter & Associates.
Dude, you gotta hear this.
Go ahead. I think I want to hear this.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is Sports Daily. A couple minutes away here from Paul Mills joining the program. Get caught up on Wichita State men's basketball, an update on how things are going there. Odyssey and KEYN bring you Concerts in the Park, sponsored by IHOP. Free live music Friday from 8 to 10 in Andover Central Park at the Capitol Federal Amphitheater. 1607 East Central Avenue in Andover this Friday. It's Annie Up. Bring your lawn chairs, blankets, extra cash for the food trucks. No coolers allowed. Gates open at 6:30. Tommy, it's Shohei Ohtani's world, and we're all just sort of living in it. We'll talk about this in the next hour, but a couple more home runs last night. Great on the mound. He is like leading most offensive categories in Major League Baseball and is top 10 in most pitching categories in Major League Baseball. This is nuts, man. Just crazy. You want to talk about trade value or free agent value? Like, I don't even know how you assess that at this point.
And I don't even think that he's really getting the amount of attention that he deserves. I mean, he's getting a lot of attention, don't get me wrong, but we've never seen anything like this before. And this is, I mean, it's not new. Like, this is the couple seasons in to the Shohei Ohtani experience.
Third year of this. Yeah, man,
I feel like this is something, and maybe it's because, he's out on the West Coast and the games play late or whatever here, in this part of the country or on the East Coast. But man, he is incredible to watch on both the bump and, batting. It's awesome. There's really no other way to describe it. Leading, a bunch of categories, both hitting and pitching. Did you know, by the way, I looked at the odds on BetMGM earlier. He is minus 1,000 to win the AL MVP. Minus 1,000 to win the AL MVP.
Bet 100 to win $1. If you'd like. It's nuts. We'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. Paul Mills joins us after the break. Before that, let's give away some ticket vouchers for the Wichita Wind Surge. Good for any home game. We have those for you. You get the voucher. You pick the game, courtesy of us here at Sports Daily and KFH. We'll do that now to the first caller during the break, 869-1240. Chad will get that taken care of, and we'll get Paul Mills on board for, I believe it's the second time here on the show, but a good timing because I want to get an update on how things are looking right now for this roster. That's coming next on Sports Daily.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. It is Sports Daily. It is KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor here with you. Should be joined by Paul Mills, Wichita State's head coach, in just a few minutes here as we get you ready for the second hour of the program. With Christy Breadbinner, Wichita State softball coach, at the top of the show. If you missed any of that, you can go back and listen for free on the Odyssey app. We have this shocker stuff today, Tommy. No coincidence or anything. Just a timing thing in the summertime, but they had a fan event last night to meet some of the new coaches, a meet and greet. You've got Brian Green, Terry Nooner, Paul Mills, all there now. It's a lot of changes happening at Wichita State. I try to keep a pulse on it, chat with Shocker fans, get a gauge of how everybody's feeling. And I think right now, from what I gather, people are generally bullish on the direction of some of this stuff, but it's all going to come down to these games and how it plays out. But good time to get a chance to get to know this team. So we're looking forward to the conversation with Paul Mills coming up in just a little bit. And Tommy, it's interesting. I guess I'm the most immediately curious if the roster construction is done or if they're still searching. I think that they still have a scholarship left. I'm not 100% sure on that. We'll find out. But that I guess becomes the interesting thing is anybody else out there they're looking for? Or is this the group?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the key word there that I think about when I think of Shocker men's basketball and the direction of the program under Paul Mills is encouraged. That would be the word that I would use. I don't know if I'm ready to say confident. Don't know if I'm ready to say excited yet. I think, but I think encouraged is the right word. Some of the major program transfers that have come in, to this program, I'm excited about and looking forward to hearing more about it.
Well, let's get right to it then. Joining us now on the program, I believe it's the second time, Paul Mills, head coach of Wichita State men's basketball. Coach, thanks for joining us. Welcome back.
Tommy, Jacob, thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, Coach. We'll just start with last night. We were just mentioning the meet and greet. How did that go? How have things gone just in general terms for you now? I don't know how long it's been exactly, but some time to sort of get to know people, for people to get to know you, integrate a little bit with the fan base. Is this everything you dreamed about when you took the job here?
It's been great. We've had several of these caravans in Kansas City and Derby and Oklahoma City, and so we've gotten to meet Shocker fans, but we haven't had a chance to visit with Shocker fans here in Wichita. So that opportunity and to interact with our players on the men's and women's side, I think is great. People are excited about Shocker basketball. People love that there's a history here. I love the fact that I get to run into Aubrey Sherrod and Xavier McDaniel every day as those guys are up here working out. And so to get to see those guys, knowing the history, seeing the fan base in a variety of different venues, it's a wonderful, wonderful experience, and we're looking forward to tipping this off, but that's still months down the road.
Coach, I know that we'll probably here in a couple minutes talk about some of the transfers coming into this program, but I think my first question is, how has the integration been with the returning players that were on this roster last year working in your system now? So guys like Xavier Bell, Colby Rogers, Quincy Ballard, of course, Kenny Poto coming back. What's that been like working with those guys that were part of the program a year ago?
Yeah, it's been good. We had some opportunities with each of those guys during the spring when I was initially hired in late March. So familiar with those guys and what they're doing, and obviously talking with each of them and going through film with each of them about their games and what needed to improve and what they were doing well that we needed to, hey, we're good at, but how do we become great at it? And so knowing all of those guys and having that opportunity, it was good because summer wasn't the first time. And then to incorporate the new guys, have everybody here. We're still missing. Joy is coming over from NBA Academy in Africa, and he'll be here later this week. But to have all those guys right now on campus, will officially begin practice July 17th in anticipation for a trip overseas in order to play several opponents. So it's been good. We're only allowed 4 hours a week with them, but this time has been beneficial for us.
I remember head coach Paul Mills, Wichita State men's basketball, joining us here on Sports Daily. I remember the first time we talked, you talked a lot about how, style is a hard thing to talk about now until you see what the roster is, and that would be, flexible and sort of bend itself to what you have. Do you have any insight on that now that you've seen guys, now that you know what the roster looks like a little bit? Can you give Shocker fans any insight to what you guys as coaches are hoping this team will look like stylistically next year?
I can't. One, because kids are still jumping in the portal constantly. And so there's a number of opportunity to still upgrade your roster. We still have a couple of scholarships available, and we're not going to take somebody just to take somebody and just fill the roster just to fill it, to say we have 13 scholarships. But at the same time, there's still guys that are out there that are a quality fit, and trying to see just where they're at, when they'll make decisions, going through this process. So recruiting never stops. It used to be like, hey, at the end of May, you knew your roster moving forward, and you were able to go. And maybe if you had a kid or two in the draft, you had to wait. But once the NBA draft came around, everybody kind of knew where they were based on the guys. It's different now. I mean, you had quality players entering the portal on Sunday night. And so I think rosters are constantly in flux. And if we can upgrade and make the team better, and we know it's a fit, we're going to. And so there's still some focus on the 2023 class and completing that. And so we do have an idea, though, about our primary pieces. Jacob Germany has been great. The transfer, he's an all-conference player at UTSA, and Kenny Poto. How do we play those guys together? Where does Quincy Ballard, given that he was injured a year ago, where does he fit in this entire mix? So there has been some stylistic questions, but in regards to, all right, we've got a roster in place now, we can understand what we're going to do moving forward from a basketball standpoint. We're still not there yet.
Coach, it seems to me, and maybe I'm off base here, and you can tell me that I'm an idiot, and that's totally fine when I bring this up. But it seemed to me that some of the strategy in bringing in some transfers during this offseason, look outside of maybe Jacob Germany, looking at some of these players that played for big programs in the SEC or Big 12, or, of course, Miami, and maybe, these guys not getting a huge opportunity at the programs, but then coming into Wichita State to take the next step forward, like Bijan Cortez from Oklahoma, of course, Harlan Beverly from Miami. I mentioned him. Ronnie DeGray from Missouri. Was that a strategy that you were looking at seeing, trying to find some guys that, had played in big time programs that maybe needed to take a big step forward with the Wichita State program?
Well, I knew all of those guys. I mean, knew Harlan, knew Ronnie, knew Bijan, and, knew Jacob. So I was aware of those guys. And, since I've known them and since I've watched them play, Harlan obviously was injured and played in a real good backcourt with Wong and Nigel Pack, was a Final Four backcourt there at Miami, and didn't get cleared until late. But I knew what these guys were capable of. It's similar to me coached a guy who ended up being the 6th pick in the NBA draft named Epe Udoh. And Epe was at Michigan a couple of years, and it just didn't work, and then transferred to us back in the day when you had to sit out. And then a year later, he was the 6th pick in the NBA draft. But you always knew his skill set. You always knew that, man, this guy has ability. Is this a situation, a better environment where he could flourish? And that's kind of what I think about each of the guys that we've been able to add. Not that I'm smarter than anybody else, but it's just, man, I do believe we could utilize this person differently and maybe showcase some of the things that he didn't showcase before for whatever reason. Sometimes due to injury, sometimes because you just had older guys in front of you and you had to kind of wait your turn. But, all of these guys played for really good basketball teams. So they'll have more of a role here than they did at their previous places. And it's really a question of, what did you think of their capability and how can you utilize them now?
Let's have a little fun too, Coach, because we didn't have as much of an opportunity when everybody was just getting to know you off the top there the last time we talked. I want to bring something up that a lot of people pointed at. So when you were hired, everyone kept pointing to this article by the Sporting News earlier this year that called you maybe a villain in the league, which surprised us all from Oral Roberts. But how do you like that? And I asked that because you know about Play Angry. You've know what Wichita State fans pride themselves on. They're a little rugged, a little mean, maybe a little bit, but everyone pointed to that as, see, he's going to fit right in. What did you think of that when you were painted as a villain? And are you able to have fun with that? And have you been able to have any fun with that with Shocker fans?
I haven't seen the article. It's been, somebody mentioned it to me, and I think what happens is nobody likes to see the poor get rich. It's kind of like, listen, you stay over where in your neighborhood, don't come over here. And so I think what happened, maybe why, I don't know who wrote it. They may be from another team, but I mean, there were some teams that were pretty dominant. And when I took over at Oral Roberts, it didn't even make the conference tournament in a 9-team league, and 8 teams were invited. So you just inherited a program that had some winning, but at that particular time, was sitting in last place. And so we just continued to make climbs, and dogs don't bark at parked cars. And so as you start moving forward, people are going to say whatever it is they want to say, but I make no apologies for going undefeated in the league. So if that makes me a villain, it makes me a villain. I had little to do with it other than I had the chance to. I never got a rebound or scored a point, but I was surrounded by some really good guys, and we were able to win some games.
Coach, I read a really great article in the Wichita Eagle about how a phone call from Jerome Tang led your program to a trip to Greece. For those folks that didn't have a chance to read that article, and of course that's been in the news for the last few weeks or so, that your team will be making that trip. Talk a little bit about how that all came about, and what kind of benefits you see your team going overseas.
Sure. Jerome's a dear friend. He and I were together for 14 years. And, I tell people not only were we together, our offices side by side, but when we went on the road, we were roommates. So literally lived with the guy. His children were at my house. My children were at his house. And so we talked frequently. And he was telling me about they were scheduled to go to Greece, but a new opportunity had come up that allowed them to make a trip to Israel for their summer tour. I just said, well, what are you going to do with the Greece trip? And he said, do you want it? And I said, absolutely. And he had told me about how they had paid some money and they were going to be out. So we called the organizers of the event, just asked, could you credit that over to us? And they said, yeah, we need somebody to take this off of our hands. So Jerome allowed us to do that and get that opportunity. I mean, getting to take a team to Athens and Thessaloniki and be able to play games. If you've seen the Disney movie Rise on Giannis, he built a court in Athens. And so you're playing on a court that was recently built against some national teams, the Greek national team, and against quality opponents. So that opportunity to get over there, play quality opponents, and have an experience like that. I mean, I've never been to Greece. I don't know if I'll ever get the opportunity to go again, but especially with a new team, just from a team bonding perspective, from a competitive perspective, and at the same time, you get real practices in the summer, unlike right now where you're only allowed to be with them 4 hours a week. Building up to those games, you get 20 hours a week. So you get quality time that you wouldn't otherwise get in order to help go further faster from a basketball standpoint.
Head coach Paul Mills, Wichita State basketball, joining us here. We appreciate the time on Sports Daily. So when you get trips like that the timing on this seems perfect when it's not a start from scratch, but it's a fresh start for just about everybody, whether they're coming here or whether it's old players, they're getting you for the first time. I can't imagine how valuable the timing of this trip and the extra practice is versus just any other normal year. Yeah. I mean, the conference is going through a transition. I remind myself that of the 6 final teams playing in the Final Four and the 2 in the NIT, half of them are coming into this league. Florida Atlantic, UAB, North Texas, and so you're adding really good teams. So the conference is in a transition, and I think Wichita State is, and who we are, we're well positioned in the AAC just in order to catapult. But in order to catapult and make strides, you have to be on the same page. You have to be a team, and you got to be a good one. And so having opportunities like this, not only from a chemistry and a bonding standpoint, but again, from a practice standpoint, and being able to implement new guys into this from the jump
helps, and you don't have to guess and worry. I wonder if they can handle this. I wonder if they can handle that. It's, you know what, we're gonna be able to find out answers in August before we ever start a day of class. So it's definitely extremely beneficial.
Coach, it's been a point of contention around here in Wichita for quite a while. The fact that it's been so long since Wichita State and the University of Kansas have played against each other in a regular season game. Your program, you're going to be playing KU in December in Kansas City at the T-Mobile Center. What does that mean to you? And as you're working on building this program and putting it into place to be able to face an opponent like Kansas?
Yeah, Kansas doesn't have professional basketball. There's no NBA teams here. So people support the Shockers, the Jayhawks, the Wildcats. And so I do think that it's important that the people of Kansas have an opportunity with whatever institution that you support to see these teams play. And so fortunately, there were games in place in order to play the Wildcats. So to be able to play the Jayhawks in Kansas City on a neutral floor, we play the Wildcats right before Christmas on the 21st, and then play the Jayhawks on the 30th. You know, Merry Christmas to me with those two games sandwiched in. I hope I remember Christmas is on the 25th. You'll be so focused on other things, but I think it's important not only for the institutions. I think it's a national game that people will pay attention to and will get national attention. But I am aware of how important it is, not only to the people of Wichita, but to the state of Kansas.
And I think an important opportunity for your players as well, that I'm sure that you'll amplify how important that could be for them. One more here. How much have you been able to pay attention to the TBT stuff? Speaking of the love of basketball in this state, all three of those teams have alumni teams coming in now. Pretty big time names on those rosters too. Have you ever really paid much attention to it? I would imagine that you will now with it being at Koch Arena.
Yeah, July is such a whirlwind for us as coaches, simply because you're running gym to gym and airplane to airplane, because it's the time of the year where we recruit. But what would happen is as you would get into hotel rooms or you'd sit down somewhere to grab a bite to eat, you would see these games on ESPN, these TBT games. And I was always amazed that any time a game was ever played in Koch, I was amazed at how many fans were here in comparison to other games that you would see at TBT. I remember being in Louisville, Kentucky a few years back, and ran in somewhere with some coaches to grab a quick bite to eat between games. And on the screen were these games, the TBT games. And they were panning back and forth between Koch and other places. And it was like, let me tell you, people in Wichita love their, not only Shockers, but they enjoy basketball. So I'm excited about seeing it, being a part of it. Opposing teams, coaches have called me asking for practice time because they think that the Aftershocks have this huge advantage, and I keep telling them they do, and that's why you're not going to be able to get the court and be able to have an opportunity to warm up like the Aftershock. So my bias is already playing through, but I'm excited to watch it in person.
See, there's a little of that villain there for you. I like that.
I love that.
We
love that.
Not giving you a practice time, if that makes you a villain. I guess that's the criteria.
No, it makes you fit in with Shocker fans is what it does, and that'll be fun to see. They don't have any qualms of getting a little, getting into the trenches and getting into the mud a little bit in those. Well, we appreciate it, Coach. Let's do this again soon as we make our way through. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on this roster and what they look like. So we'll do that again, hopefully before you guys head out to Greece and get some updates, and looking forward to the next Shocker basketball season.
Gentlemen, thank you.
There goes Paul Mills, head coach, Wichita State basketball. We'll come back. We'll discuss that a little bit. You can go back if you joined us late and listen to the whole thing on the Odyssey app. It'll be on demand right there for you. It's podcasted out as well. It's Albracht and Castor. It's Sports Daily. We'll be right back.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. It's Albracht and Castor. Appreciate Paul Mills stopping by, chatting it up a little bit. A little early, thanks to get a real good feel for what this roster will be stylistically. And, you know, the reason is they may still have some more roster coming in, Tommy. I think we got that question answered there. A little bit of fun with some of the, you know, things that people write about Paul Mills, but we're looking forward to how that comes together. If you missed any of that, you can go back on the Odyssey app and listen to it, as well as our interview off the top of the show there with Christy Breadbinner, Wichita State head softball coach. Real quick news item here, Tommy. Keisha just announced out of their executive board meeting that state football will now be held at 3 locations with 3 games at each site. We're getting there. We're getting closer.
Yeah.
That's better.
Yep. Yeah, no, it is. Of course, I think we all feel like the goal needs to be one site for state football and have a big blowout with all of the teams and all the different classes playing in one area. I've always been an advocate for that because it becomes a spectacle at that point, and you don't have to worry about sending a bunch of people all over the state at different places. You have one site for the entire state, and that's where state football is knocked out.
Yep, I agree with that. 3 is certainly better than 6. And it'll, I believe, take place over 2 days. So that's progress. I think even more than football in this state, it could be something spectacular for basketball, and you do it at Intrust Bank Arena. You've got the hotel space, you've got the time, like all of that. Because that's what, look, and if you say it can't be done, they do it in Texas. If they can do it in Texas, they can do it here, right? Like that, it'll be fine. But good to see that. And if it goes well, maybe that's the progress we made. So that little news item came out. We'll have it covered for you on Catch It Kansas throughout the day, so you can check back in there. That just came down, that information, like in the last, 20 minutes or so. All right, let's talk a little Shohei Ohtani here, Tommy, as he continues to do these things that are insane. And you can go and find, all the different stats and everything else. But it's crazy because he's essentially leading the way offensively in baseball in just tons and tons, especially of power type categories. And he's also pretty much a top 10 pitcher in baseball right now by a lot of the pitching metrics. It would be one thing if he was, serviceable at both, but he's in the conversation of like most gifted to do both. That's what's so wild about it when we watch it happen. And you're just like, it's almost hard to not comprehend, but you said, I don't know that we appreciate it enough. He's the biggest story in Major League Baseball. I don't think there's a question about that now that Judge's home run chase is over, but it is almost like we're still undervaluing just how wild this is. Like to be able to do both at the highest level, not just to do both at the big league level, but to do both at the big league level to MVP/Cy Young abilities, it just doesn't make any sense.
So this guy, as a hitter, has an average over 300 and an OPS over 1,000. As a pitcher, opponents against him have a batting average of 180 and an OPS of 600. I mean, it's remarkable. Here's another stat for you that this is going to sound ridiculous, but it's the truth. I'm just going to read it straight out. Shohei Ohtani of the Angels is the first major league player to reach base 4+ times, hit 2+ home runs, and strike out 10+ batters all in the same game since Jack Stivitz did so for the St. Louis Browns against the Toledo Mommies on June 10th, 1890. If that tells you anything about the way that Shohei Ohtani is breaking records left and right.
I'm pretty sad that Toledo Mommies don't still exist. I'll tell you that right now. I don't know. I mean, and it's unfortunate for the Angels, or maybe it's not because maybe they just keep him anyway. Like, it's crazy because all I can think about is what is his value on the open market now? Like, how do you even find it? Right? We see pitchers going for $40 million a year, hitters going for $40 million a year. It's not $80 million a year, but like, what is it? Is it $60 million a year? Like, I don't know how you quantify that, because it's this crazy thing that's happening. He's handling the physical nature of it so well, like it doesn't seem to be pulling from one or the other, right? There's nothing that would ever tell you like he needs to do one or the other, because he's handling this well. Credit to the Angels too, I think, because they never get any, but a credit to them to coming up with this program that works, right? Like, because I would imagine the next group's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Massaging into the 6-man rotation and all the things that they've done to facilitate this and make it work. Credit to them for that too. But it is pretty wild. And I think it's fun that he's an international player. I think I hope that down the road there's an American player doing this too. But it is cool because I think that one thing he does do is expand that international footprint of baseball, which is always good for the sport, right? It always is going to bring better players to the sport and all of those things. And he's doing it with great attitude. Like, it's just all there. I mean, other than the fact that he plays for the Angels, which is a rival team to the team I root for, like, there's nothing not to like, right? How could you not like him?
Yeah, and don't you think that as far as like assessing his value, you almost have to separate the, Shohei Ohtani, the hitter, and Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher, and take his, and I think you have to start there and you take his value as a hitter as it compares to other hitters in Major League Baseball and what they're garnering on the market. And then you do the same thing as Ohtani as a pitcher. And then you almost have to add the two together, to find out what his actual value is. That makes it really difficult. And you're looking at a lot of money. And I think with the Angels, think about the fact that they've got Ohtani and they've got Mike Trout. And Trout is probably the best or in the top 3 of best players in Major League Baseball over the last decade or so. And you've got a situation here with 2 superstars where the Angels are not in first place in their division. I don't think a lot of folks are really considering them as a legitimate World Series contender. They're probably in the market as a wild card right now. They're probably being considered, as a potential wild card team. I wonder, and the big speculation this offseason is going to be if Shohei Ohtani will return to the Angels, if he'll sign somewhere else. We talked about with the NBA not that long ago, Nikola Jokic and the pressure on the shoulders of the Nuggets to win a championship for Jokic, or he'd have to go somewhere else. I think there's that same kind of pressure on the shoulders of the Angels organization because you've got Ohtani and Mike Trout. You should be competing for championships. And if you don't, and if you're not able to do that, I wouldn't blame Shohei Ohtani for wanting to go elsewhere.
Baseball, I think we can do that less than we can with other sports. I don't think it's I don't think it's quite as simple. It probably comes down to money to some degree, if not to the most degree. So let's think about this way. So if Aaron Judge is valued at $40 million a year as a hitter, Aaron Judge is he plays a defensive position, so you can add some value there. But as a hitter, he's 31 years old. Ohtani is going to come in at a little bit younger. He's 28 and about to be 29. But doesn't Ohtani have at least as much value just strictly as a hitter as Aaron Judge? Because I think he probably does, right? I mean, he's leading most of the categories this year and has been there now consistently enough. So I would say that it's not unfair to say he's as valuable just as a hitter as Aaron Judge is on the market. If Garrett Cole has the biggest contract, and I think Verlander has the biggest by year at like 40 or whatever it is, but let's just say it's 35 to 40. I don't think Ohtani has as much pitcher value maybe as those guys because he won't throw as many innings. So, how far down the pitcher list do you have to go? I don't know. Where is it? I'm just trying to think. It's probably, DeGrom has his injury risk. Like, I don't know how far down you have to go, but it's probably $30 million a year. I don't know how to evaluate it. And I don't think baseball does either, by the way. Like, this is going to be the most fascinating free agency, if it goes that way, that we've ever seen, because I don't think anybody knows how to evaluate it. So the creativity on it is going to be through the roof. Like, there's no blueprint for how to do this with this guy.
Yeah, if I'm in the front office and ownership of the Angels, I've been planning for this and prepping for this for over a year now, knowing that Ohtani's going to hit free agency. And I would imagine that the team that would have the biggest handle on his value is the team that currently has Shohei Ohtani on the roster. So you're going to see major market teams this offseason, like the Dodgers, like the Yankees. I mean, it's the usual suspects are going to open up the pocketbooks more than likely to try to get Ohtani on their roster, not just for his prowess in hitting and the great pitcher that he is, but also, that by bringing Ohtani on your roster and he's such a spectacle, you're going to sell more tickets. You're going to sell more merchandise. You're going to make a lot more money by bringing him on your team. So teams are going to be willing to spend to get him. But I would imagine, and I don't know, I think that it's going to come down for Ohtani, not only about the money, but also what's the likelihood of him winning a championship with whatever team he signs with. If I'm the Angels, I've got to have a strategy in place to not only take care of him financially, but also make sure I've got the right pieces around him to be a legitimate contender to win a World Series. And if the Angels can't get that done, then yeah, if I'm Ohtani, I'm going somewhere else. I'm going to a team like the Dodgers or the Yankees who can, basically put a roster in front of me, not only the money, not only the blank check basically, but the roster that says this is what's going to win us a championship, and you're the final piece of that.
Well, and the hard part about that too, from the Angels' perspective, is you have had him and it hasn't been enough. So
Right.
now you're going to pay that much. Is that the ticket for them? I don't know. I mean, I don't know, because you can just sort of look at it that way too. Like, you've had the two best players and it hasn't been the right way to do it. So if you're looking at it organizationally, is spending even more for that still the best way to do it, or does that money better serve us spread among 4 players? That's the complicated thing, I think. And the Angels aren't going to want to let him go. Don't get me wrong, but baseball is weird that way, right? Individuals have less of an impact, I think, singularly in baseball than they do in any other sport. But again, singularly, he helps you from 2 different fronts. It's almost like he's 2 different players. So that's where it gets really tricky.
And
he's
look,
2 players.
Right. And again, on top of that, I do agree with you. It is more difficult in baseball to assess a singular value to the overall result of a team, right? I get that and I respect that. But keep in mind, this is a stat from yesterday. Just in the game yesterday for Ohtani, on the mound, he was 0.4 in WAR on the mound pitching. At the plate, he was also 0.4 in WAR. So by himself, he accumulated almost a full win in one day for his team. So there has never been a player that can singularly impact the result for a team like Shohei Ohtani. That's what makes it more difficult.
But
you can look at any other player,
but he only has that kind of impact once a week. You know what I mean?
right? But then he's in the lineup basically every day, and so I think that you can look at like an Aaron Judge or a Fernando Tatis or a Juan Soto, a Bryce Harper on one end. You can look at a Garrett Cole, and some of the other dominant pitchers in Major League Baseball on the other end. And that's all great. And you can say, yeah, those guys are extremely talented and they're certainly helping their teams. But singularly, is it enough for one of those guys to lead those teams to a championship? Probably not by themselves. Shohei Ohtani is a little bit different.
It's sorry for everybody else who wants to win the MVP in the American League, because it took a home run title to get it last year. And I don't even know if a Triple Crown is going to be enough in some years. So that's going to be a problem, I think, for baseball to some degree, is how to figure that out. But it is what it is. I mean, we'll enjoy the problem. If you want to weigh in, 869-1240, the IOP hotline is open. Let's come back. We'll continue here on Sports Daily. Glad to be with you on this Wednesday. It is the midweek edition, and it'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. Tommy's got a little Shohei trivia as we're talking about Ohtani. All right, hit me with it, Tommy.
Okay, so this is really interesting. Who was the last pitcher before Shohei Ohtani in either the American League or the National League to hit 2 home runs and strike out 10 in a single game? The very last one.
Is this in my lifetime?
Yes.
Okay. So I've got 2 guesses at this, and it's not because I remember this happening, but I'm trying to just remember the only 2 that I could think of that were capable. I'll start with Rick Ankiel.
Nope, it was not Rick Ankiel.
The only other one I can think of is Micah Owings.
Nope, wasn't him either. Back in 2019, Zach Greinke hit 2 home runs in a game and struck out 10. And
Now
then
I
it
do
actually
remember
happened. It happened 2 years before that. Madison Bumgarner did the same thing in 2017. But I thought that was kind of interesting. Zach Greinke, I would have never thought. And I don't remember that happening in 2019, hitting 2 home runs and striking out 10.
It's pretty cool. God, I love Greinke. He and Salvi. I feel so bad for the Royals for those 2 guys. I wonder if how much trade value Greinke might have this year.
Probably not much.
Probably not much, but it's one of those, like, could you use a back-end guy or somebody that, you could envision in a pinch in a playoff game? The Royals trade value meter is going to be fascinating. We talked about this earlier this week. I do think it's a seller's market. It's just like there's not much to sell. We had a full discussion on Bobby Witt Jr., which you can go back and listen to from the first hour. But let's exclude him. Salvi certainly has value, but his contract is pricey, and that's where I think you need to see Royals ownership step up financially. Like, if a good package comes back, but you got to eat some salary, and you're going to end up trading him, eat the salary, right? Take the players, eat the salary. Chapman and Barlow stand out to me the most. Of course, Barlow blew a save last night. His ERA is not as stellar as it's been, but I would still imagine he's got some value based on his track record and experience. Chapman obviously does. And again, I wonder if they're not better served going somewhere together than they are separately. But there's just not a lot there this year. Not a lot there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that even though Barlow's ERA is not exactly where you would want it, I think he's got good enough stuff where a contender is going to want to use him down the stretch. And I think that goes back to the conversation about Greinke. Greinke doesn't really have stuff anymore. He's admitted that. I mean, he's got to be creative in the way that he gets guys out. He's not a swing and miss pitcher anymore. He's pitching to contact. He's got to get creative with off speed stuff. And that's really where, think of the teams that would want a starting pitcher down the stretch. More than likely, they're not going to be willing to give a lot in return for a guy who's nearly 40 that doesn't have, really explosive stuff anymore. And unfortunately, I mean, I know that's a knock on Greinke, and I love Zach Greinke, and I love the homecoming back to Kansas City. I just don't see him really garnering much of a return.
The problem for Barlow is you want him to get hot, but I'm looking at his numbers in June, and he's given up a base runner in every appearance, right? A base runner in every appearance. He's allowed runs in 3 out of 7 appearances. If you're trying to like, if you're trying to get the most out, like the timing on this has not been, and look, there's psychology involved in that, I think, and probably teams, like, I think wherever he goes, he'll end up handy. And I just hope that the Royals are able to trade to what he normally is versus what he's looked like at times this year. Because if you go back to past years, an ERA the last 2 of 2.42 and 2.18 and a whip that's just at 1 last year, at 1.2 the year before, he's not performing at his normal level by any means. And I just, it makes you shake your head at why he's not been traded in the last 2 years. It makes absolutely no sense.
I do think that teams are going to be willing to overlook his recent stuff for what he's potentially able to bring to the table. Look at the Dodgers. I know I brought them up a lot on the show, but they view themselves as legitimate contenders. They're going to be buyers at the trade deadline, and they have one of the worst bullpens in baseball. That's their Achilles heel. Their bullpen ERA is 4.64. And so I'm not saying that Barlow's going to be at the top of their wish list. There's probably other relievers out there, but I think that at this point they're willing to try to grab some other relievers. Even though Barlow, hasn't had great stuff recently, I think they're going to be willing to look at his potential and, maybe hoping to help out that much maligned bullpen. They're not the only team. I mean, look at your Rangers, for example. Their bullpen is over 4. There are other teams, the Diamondbacks, their bullpen ERA is over 4. So there are going to be teams that are going to be looking for bullpen help. And even though Barlow's numbers recently haven't been great, he's got the stuff to make all of these teams, their bullpens, much better.
So if Philadelphia is in, a contender, which they probably think that they are, their bullpen hasn't been very good either. Of the contenders, Milwaukee's bullpen could use a little bit of help. Miami, Cincinnati, Boston, Tampa's has been pretty good. If I go to the Yankees, has been great. The Padres, Seattle, fine. The Angels are fine. The Braves are fine. The Astros are fine. Baltimore's probably okay, but there are a lot of teams that need bullpen help, and a lot of teams that think they can win a World Series.
A lot of teams that feel like that's really the only thing standing between them and being legitimate contenders is the bullpen. And so that's where, if I'm the Royals, if I'm JJ Piccolo, I'm interested in trading the young stars if the price is right, but I'm putting Aroldis Chapman and Scott Barlow on a silver platter to these teams. Like, hey, give us some value back. We will move them right now if we can get great value and be able to start helping our farm system again.
Yeah, it's just get it right. You got to get it right. And we do need at some point, and maybe we'll bring in one of their minor league insiders to better help us understand it. I want to know how anything they brought back last year has worked too. So definitely want to do that as well. We'll try to get that on this summer and look at that. But the trade deadline is going to be the most interesting part of the Royals season, I think. So we'll just have to see it. 869-1240. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on tap on the network today as Sports Daily returns. All right, everybody. Jam-packed Wednesday. What a show it was. A lot of fun. Thanks for joining us. The IHOP hotline was hot today at 869-1240. Christy Bredbender, Wichita State softball head coach. Paul Mills, Wichita State Edmonds basketball coach, joining us. You can go back to listen to those interviews on the Odyssey app. Coming up on the network today, Jim Rome follows us just a couple of days away from the Smack-Off on Friday. Bob and Jeff at 2. Maggie and Perloff at 4 before Zach Gelb at 5, and then the Royals take you home tonight. Coverage begins at 7 o'clock right here on KFH. For Jad Chambers producing and Tommy Castor, I'm Jacob Albracht. We will see you tomorrow.